started. So firstly, I really want to thank Fernanda for being here today, and I want to thank all of you, because I know that your time and attention is very precious, and it's a real privilege to be able to spend this hour with you, and we're just sincerely grateful that you could be here and you've chosen to spend time with us. So before we begin the workshop, I just want to give you a little introduction to Fernanda Paiva of Hitchhiking Stars. She is a true expert in astrology, and her approach to her craft is characterized by care, compassion, and a genuine desire to bring healing to those she works with. Her sensitivity and focus on the positive aspects of astrology really set her apart in her field, and she is totally determined to challenge the sometimes negative norms that can reside in astrology, and instead she offers positive interpretations of everything, which help guide her clients to empowerment and growth. She originally comes from Brazil and boasts over a decade of experience in her field with an impressive list of qualifications to match. She holds a certificate in astrology from the prestigious London School of Astrology, and she recently completed her master's degree, yay, congratulations, in cultural astronomy and astrology from the University of Wales, Trinity, St. David. As part of her mission to empower and guide individuals on their spiritual paths, Fernanda also provides us with invaluable insights as a contributing expert to the Witches Circle. The Witches Circle, or TWC for short, is an exclusive membership which provides a safe space for people looking for community and connection. If you haven't heard of TWC before, I'll just give you a really quick rundown. So each month, Amethyst and I design 2 workbooks for the full and the new moon, and these include everything you need in order to supercharge your magical practice. We also offer live events just like this one, where we invite other practitioners into TWC so that we can give you a real variety of opinions and practices. We really understand that everybody's practice is super different, and we never want to be the only voice that you hear guiding you. So we love to share the space with a range of different practitioners, and we've previously hosted live events from making a magically charged cocktail to a vision journey through the mists of Avalon with a high priestess, to making spell jars, to making crystal grids, to tea ceremonies, and we've been joined by best-selling authors, breathwork and meditation teachers. We've had rituals with people who are experts in kitchen witchery and shadow work and manifestation and music and magic. So it's super eclectic. But that's just like everyone else's practice. So we just love to share like a range of things for you. We also offer a really safe space where we've got hundreds of people from all over the world who kind of join us in real time via Slack and share experiences, magical practices, swap spells and rituals, and ask questions and receive guidance from the whole community. It's really a space that Amethyst and I wish we'd had when we were first starting our journeys. And we really aim to provide you with everything you need to create a holistic and sustainable magical practice which doesn't feel overwhelming or exhausting. And everything we give you is an offering rather than anything that's demanded or expected, because we never want you to feel overwhelmed, gatekept, or like your practice isn't valid. So if this resonates with you, we'd love to welcome you to the community soon, and we'll send you further information with the replay of this event. And with that, I'll pass over to Fernanda.
Thank you, Amaria. Thank you. It's great to be here, and it's great to see so many of you as well. I'm like overwhelmed, as a sensitive person would be with the amount of people here. This is amazing. That's great. So just to confirm, how long do I have, Amaria? So I can be the timekeeper here. I have an hour. Okay, great. Brilliant. So I am going to share my screen and share my presentation with you. As Amaria said, keep track of your questions. Questions are very precious, and I really love to answer questions. So there's no an answer, even if I don't know the answer, that's okay. I still rather you ask, you know. I know that many of you, I don't know if you're all gonna have the chance to speak, but yes, keep track of your questions, your queries, your comments as well, because I love to go through that as well after, even if you do it on the chat box as well. That's great. So astrology for empaths and highly sensitive, that's the topic for today. Let's move on into my first slide. So like I said, welcome everyone. So this presentation today is going to be in 3 parts. The first part, we're going to talk a little bit about the sensitivity and why this topic as well. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about my journey with it as well. Like, what happened? How did I mix astrology with sensitivity, and why did I decide to work with that as well? On part 2, we're going to look into natal astrology. So you're going to notice that I'm very Virgoan. I have this like very organized way of doing my presentation. So in part 2, we're going to dedicate to natal astrology, and the natal astrology is separated in 5 main aspects, or 5 main placements that I usually see connected with sensitivity and empaths as well. And then on part 3, we're going to be talking about astrology transits. Now, this part will be a little bit of a toolkit. So we're going to talk about transits to beware of, something, obviously, bear in mind that this is going to be simplified. We can go much more deeper into any of these elements here that we're going to talk about, that we're going to touch upon. But this talk is meant to be an introduction, is meant to be a taster for you guys to get your juices going, your creativity juices, and to be thinking about in terms of how can we look at astrology from the sensitivity, or taking sensitivity into consideration as well. Like, is astrology useful? How can you make it even more useful, etc. So this is an invitation. Before moving to the next slide, I want to say this is an invitation for you to look through my window. So I'm going to open a little window here for you of my perspective, of my research, of my work, the things I've been observing. And so I'm welcoming you into this space now. So afterwards, you can share with me your thoughts, your ideas, and etc. So let's move on so we can keep track of the time and make sure everything is there for you. So part 1, how did that happen? That's the question I asked myself. So how did it happen? How did I come across this topic? How did I decide to do this topic as well? So there's a bit of a personal story there and a personal journey with the topic, because I've been doing astrology for a lot longer than I've decided to work with highly sensitives and empaths as well. And for me, it was a kind of a turning point when I decided to do marketing courses, and I decided to take my work to a more professional route, and my ascendant progressed into Capricorn, and I became a little bit more Capricornian about my work. And so then I was like, I kind of came across this idea of highly sensitive people. So my partner shared with me from a session, one of his therapy sessions, and I was like, that kind of called my attention. And I was like, is that a thing? I mean, I was doing my MA, so I have 2 sides. I have a side that's very academic and it really needs that sort of research based and the rigor of research and all of that. But I also have my mystical side, and what drove me to work with astrology and to read tarot cards as well, and etc. So when he told me about high sensitivity as a thing, I was like, oh, so that grabbed my attention. And it was months and months later, or like even a year later, when I was kind of looking for who would be my ideal client. That was one of the assignments we had in this like short marketing introductory course. So then I remembered about the highly sensitive person, and I was like, oh my God, I would love to work with sensitive people. Let me look into this. And when I found articles to read and I started my research, it was like a homecoming. The first article I read, I just burst into tears. I just felt incredibly, like it was like I could see my life on flashback, and a lot of things made sense, and a lot of memories from childhood, things that people said to me, situations where I felt like an outcast. There were so many memories that flooded me with emotions, and it was amazing. And that's when like I never looked back. So since I started looking into this subject, it just made more and more and more sense to me. So the journey kind of started with the sense of homecoming. And with that, I'll share just a couple of little bits here for you. I don't want to get too much into that side because we want to focus a little bit more on the astrology of it. But the research on highly sensitive people is from the 90s. So in the early 90s, psychologist Elaine Aron, she kind of coined that. So she started looking into people and being like, okay, some people tend to be a little bit more sensitive than others, and what's going on there. So the whole research sort of started there. and in academia, that is. And so there are a few different perspectives on why or where it is connected with evolution. And so we need to have more sensitives, because the sensitives can know danger before everyone else, or can smell when something is going wrong before anyone else, because we have a stronger sense of smell, or we have, we can feel things more intensely. So we can kind of tell other people about what's going on as well, and we become messengers. But there are many different perspectives there, and mainly they're all neurological in academia, as it would be. So there are a lot of explanations on how the brain works and how the brain works differently, and etc. But one thing that I found really interesting as well, and I wanted to share that with you, is that there are a lot of different species that also have they're highly sensitives. So the high sensitivity is considered a trait and is in between 15 and 20% of the population. So it's a very big number to be considered a disorder, but it's also a small number. So it's still considered on neurodivergency. So it's a different way that the brain works. And they found, so when Elena Ron was doing her research, she found a lot of biologists and people doing other research that kind of made, they were like examining their results and etc. And so there are lots of other species that have their sensitives as well. We got fish and birds and monkeys, and so dogs as well. And I don't know if you must have your pets there as well. And I was house sitting last year and this year as well, so I looked after a lot of pets, and there's definitely one that struck me as a highly sensitive dog, and there was a very strong connection between me and that dog. But anyhow, I thought that was very amazing and fascinating. So here's Elena Ron and what she came across. I'm just going to share some of the basics here just to prepare the ground for when we move into astrology, okay? So she came up with this acronym that's called DOS, that sort of describes the highly sensitive. So the D stands for depth of processing. So we process information with a lot more depth. And this, on a shadow side, can lead to overthinking, to rumination. This is one of the things that's classic as well of the sensitivity as a side effect. We think too much. We think about everything. We analyze and we process everything. Overstimulation there as well with the O. Being, I think one of the ways I think about the sensitivity is lacking on a skin layer almost. And so we can feel everything that's around us. We can see, we can be stimulated by too much light or too much noise or strong smells. We have that sort of ability to perceive more, but we can also get overwhelmed because we're perceiving so much of what's happening around us. The E stands for the emotional reactivity, so feeling things very strongly. I mean, how many of you in this audience have been to a concert or to a ballet or, anything, or even to the cinema, and you just can't help and you're just crying and you're embarrassed because you don't want the people around you to see you sobbing and you're trying to hold in. And so I think there is an element of the emotional reactivity there as a sensitivity to aesthetic as well, but also to others, to other people's sufferings, and the whole empathy comes there as well in the picture. So we feel what other people are feeling, and this can be also difficult at times, especially when we're in crowds. I mean, how many of you here as well have not gone through that? I mean, there were moments in my life, and it's still to this day, is scary to go into crowds. I just really I'd rather not go and see a favorite artist in a concert just because I cannot be around so many people at the same time. I need to be at a very specific moment, in my cycle. I need to be feeling very strong to really feel comfortable when there are so many people around me. And then the S for sensing subtleties. And I think that's another one that goes with the depth of processing as well, and seeing details. So this is another thing that highly sensitive people also have. Now, moving on, what about empaths, which is the title of this talk as well, right? The title wasn't highly sensitives only. So what about empaths? Now, again, going with my journey, I had a few friends, Aquarian friends, that used to say I was an empath. And I was like, okay, I was a bit curious, but I was a little like, I'm not sure well, all right, I'll go with it. And I kind of forgot about it, didn't really look into it too much until recently when I started my whole journey with the highly sensitive people. And I shared with one of my clients, and I was like, she found my new website and we started exchanging emails. And so she told me about Anita Morjan. I don't know if I'm saying the name right. I probably am not, so apologize for that. But she told me about her book, which is Sensitive is the New Strong. And she said, this is my Bible now. I'm really reading this book, and it's making such a difference for me. So same day I bought the book, and I was like, right, I need to read this book. And it was in her book that she mentioned Judith Orloff, who is a psychiatrist. So she's a doctor, a psychiatrist, so tick the box of the academic side for me as well, the sort of scientific side, but she's also a medium. So she's also an empath. And she's the one that wrote quite a bit of material about empaths and the differences between highly sensitives and empaths. And mind you, those books are all very interesting, and I put in a bibliography as well at the end, if you're interested, if you want to have a look yourself as well. And Anita also, her first book, which is what really got her famous there in this world, was Dying to Be Me, which I haven't had the opportunity to read yet, but I really want to, because it's about her near-death experience. And that's how she started like looking into empaths and all of that. But this is the phrase that really made a difference for me and gave me the insight and made me go, aha. So the phrase is, every empath is an HSP, but not every HSP is an empath. And I was like, that made me, that made me very curious. That made me really, it made me intrigued. And I was like, how come? Because up to that point, I thought empaths was just another denomination for highly sensitive people. I thought empaths was like a more spiritual way of saying that someone is a highly sensitive person, which is a more scientific way. So when I read that, and when I saw that coming from a psychiatrist as well, I was like, okay, let me think about that. Let me research about this a little bit more. Let me go inwards a little bit more as well, try to find my own answers. And I asked my partner, who happens to be a highly sensitive person. Actually, before telling you what I asked him, I need to say the two main differences there. So I left it there just for the suspense. So there are two main differences between the empaths and the highly sensitive people that they say. And so one of the main differences is a strong intuition. So the empath will have a stronger connection with the intuition, with premonition, with, it's all the things that we think about when we think about mediums and people that can foretell or foresee. And I still believe that there are some faculties in our brains that we can develop, and we can all develop if we work with. But I do think that empaths are already they already have a foot in there. Like they already have that as a given, is an extra sensibility or sensitivity that they have already. And the second main difference, which was a game changer for me understanding this, is the empath absorbs other people's emotions. So the highly sensitive person will feel the room, will feel other people's emotions, will feel uncomfortable, will say, oh my God, I gotta leave. But once they're gone, they're gonna be fine. Once they're in the right place, in the room that's a bit darker, that's a bit calmer, then they're fine. The empath will absorb those emotions, and especially depending on how you are, if you've eaten well, if you've sleeping well, because all of that will count, how well you are in yourself. But I have had a few situations in my life where for me, for a fact, I've absorbed some emotions or emotional content of an environment, and I have taken away with me, and I had to sit with a singing bowl and just trying to find ways, have a long bath or anything that I could find instinctively that would help me to get rid of. And I've even gone through being actually sick and having physical symptoms of things that I've absorbed. So that was a big aha moment for me, because I asked my partner, I was like, you're a highly sensitive person. Do you feel you absorb other people's emotions? And he's like, no, I don't. So for me, that was really clear, because that was something that I noticed and witnessed in my life so many times. Now, starting to weave into astrology, which is the reason why you're here. So why astrology for empaths and HSPs as well? So why astrology for sensitivity? I mean, there are so many things in the characteristics, and obviously this talk isn't just about sensitive people or empaths, and I'm sure you've done your research there as well. You're familiar with many of these different concepts, but there's usually a marked strong desire to grow and to find meaning. So this is good for you as well if you think your child might be sensitive, you know, a highly sensitive person or an empath as well, and etc. So there's a marked desire to grow and to find meaning and to do something meaningful. You know, just having a job and a 9 to 5, and it usually doesn't do for a highly sensitive. And I'm going to use the highly sensitive, but it's for the empath here as well, right? Because every empath is a highly sensitive as well. There is a strong intuition as well. And I think astrology helps us to get more and to develop and to trust more that voice. Our sense of vocation and our sense of mission, which I think is fundamental and is very, very strongly present in the lives of sensitive people. We feel we're meant to be doing something, and there is something bigger that we need to be doing, and we want to help. There's usually a marked desire to help as well, and to help others, and etc. And I think, again, astrology can help us find that path if we're still struggling with that path. Cultivating confidence, I think that's a huge one. Highly sensitive people are accustomed to mistrust themselves. We're told so many times that we're too dramatic, that we're too sensitive, that we shouldn't be creating drama, that we're just annoying people, or blah, 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 you know, that we sort of disengage with our inner voices a little bit. We feel there's something intrinsically wrong with us. And so we stop trusting our hints or our gut or how we're feeling in a situation, or even respecting how we're feeling in a situation as well. So I think astrology can be really useful to help us cultivate that confidence. Harnessing gifts as well, like looking at our gifts, you know, how many planets in fire you have in your chart, and the gift of vision, and the fact that you're more future oriented, or, you know, we can look at that as well in the chart. We can look at it from that perspective. And obviously self-understanding, which is another one. I think the self-understanding is very important for sensitives as well. There is a tendency to go inwards more, to think more, why did I do this? Why did I do it in this way? Why did I react in that way? So I think astrology can help come out. Astrology used in a constructive way, okay? I think this needs to be given here as well. I'm not talking about just any kind of astrology, but when we're really looking at it from a more constructive perspective, and it can help us to get out of that rumination and that overthinking and etc. So the self-understanding is also there, you know, that astrology can provide us with, can help us. And the self-worth. Because if we're told that we're too much, we're too sensitive, we're too dramatic, with this, with that, and that sense of feeling there's something intrinsically wrong with us, we are bound to have issues of self-esteem there as well. And again, knowing who you are, having a connection with your essence through astrology can help you reaffirm, you know, that there's nothing wrong with you, that being who you are is like, yes, maybe you cannot work 50 hours a week and have the same stamina as, you know, someone else in your family that's not sensitive, but you've got other gifts, you got all the things that you're meant to be offering. You know, you're a great counselor, you're great at looking at a person's situation and helping them to work something out, or to offer empathy, etc. So this is one of the things that came to me when I was thinking, but the 3 dots there is like, there's more to it, really, that we can also think. This is just a little general outline. Now, when it comes to natal astrology, which is our part 2 here, so I've given you a little bit of a context, just a tiny bit of context, and definitely not comprehensive, and, you know, and blah, 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 a little taster here of an introduction to my journey with sensitivity, even, you know, my perspective, my journey there. So now we're going into natal astrology, and this, I did do into 5 top placements, okay, or 5 top flavors in an astrology chart that will be reflective of sensitivity, will be reflective of an empath potentially there as well, but definitely reflective of sensitivity. And they're not in order of like the first and the 5th one is the least one. They're all like, and to be honest with you, the more you have them, let's say you have the whole 5, then it's like the more sensitive you potentially are on the scale. Yeah, because if you think about sensitivity as a trait, is, you know, there is a scale there. We can know it's not something that we can do quantitative and calculate exactly, you know. So there's a kind of a spectrum there. And so the more you have one of those 5 placements here, the more sensitive the person will be. That will be the tendency. So number 1 here, I've got water placements. Water placements, I mean water signs. We got Pisces, we got Scorpio, and we've got Cancer as well. So if you got Sun in Cancer, Ascendant in Pisces, Moon in Scorpio, there's a lot of water in your chart. There's a lot of water in your astrology chart that's going to be reflecting of that tendency to be more sensitive, to pick up on what's going on in the environment, to absorb as well. Water is very absorbent. So I think that's also there in the element of water very strongly. You're going to be more intuitive. You're going to make decisions in a more intuitive way based on feelings. Connecting emotionally is going to be of utter importance to you. Like there are like so many different things that I can think of that the water placements would be reflective, that connects to sensitivity. And then in there, I also added Virgo. And I think Virgo, and especially when you have the Pisces Virgo axis, so you've got North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo, or vice versa, or you have Sun in Virgo, Moon in Pisces, and there is a strong Virgo Pisces in the chart. Again, Virgo, I think one of the reasons of Virgo to be is to serve, is service oriented. When I was studying flower remedies, one of the most common flower remedies for Virgo is Centauri. I'm talking about the Bach flower remedies. And one of the most common flower remedies for Virgo, as I just said, is Centauri, which is learning how to say no. Is learning how to say no. That's a classic for sensitives as well, boundaries. And that's another one that we can work with astrology. We can look at Mars, we can work with our Mars energy, and we can learn how to reinforce that energy a little bit more if that's something that we struggle with. So we're all different and we're all going to struggle with different things. But this is another thing that astrology can be helpful with. So let's keep on with our 5 placements. So 1, water placements and the Pisces Virgo axis. Let's move to the next one. So number 2, we've got a prominent Neptune. Now, what I mean by prominent is you got Neptune on your angle. So you got Neptune on your ascendant, Neptune on your midheaven, Neptune opposite your ascendant or opposite your midheaven. That's going to be prominent. Or you've got Neptune in the 1st house, which is the house of identity. That's also prominent. It could be Neptune in the house of relationships. So that's the way you relate with others, with a lot of empathy, with a lot of... Neptune is the modern... So I don't know what the general level of astrology is here amongst you all. So I'm going to just, on a nutshell, what is Neptune, just in case some of you don't know. So Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces. So it does have that Piscean flavor. And it talks about transcendence, transcending our longings. And it has a very spiritual quality as well. So whenever we have a strong Neptune in our charts, there's going to be a very spiritual makeup or a need to transcend reality and to transcend boundaries. And that also means a challenge to set boundaries with people, to say no, to see the separation between you and another. So when we have a strong Neptune in the chart, that translates as a high sensitive person as well, because you pick up on everything that's going on. Again, you lack on a layer there that separates you from others. So someone that had a very strong Pisces Neptune was Billie Holiday, the jazz singer. And her music, if you ever heard her voice, her music, the way she sang, her life story, like everything really reflects that strong sensitivity. She never practiced singing. She never took any singing classes, and she was looking for a job as a dancer, and they gave her, she was so bad at dancing and they felt sorry for her. They kind of gave her a chance to sing on stage, and she said that when she sang, the whole crowd was silent. And that's how she started singing and became a singer. So there's something about Neptune and the ability that the Neptunian person has to dissolve boundaries, to increase that sense of we're all one. We're all suffering human beings. So prominent Neptune will also be Neptune with your sun, Neptune with your moon, Neptune with your Venus, you know, strong aspects between the two. That's going to be reflective of a powerful sensitivity. Number 3, prominent Chiron. So Chiron is a planetoid and is connected with, astrologers always say is the wounded healer. In mythology, Chiron was the wounded healer. He was suffered a horrible wound that was incurable, and in search for the cure, which he never found, he dabbled in a lot of different healing arts. So he became a healer himself and a teacher as well. So people that have a strong Chiron in their charts, they will usually have that pattern. That archetype will be part of the fabric of their lives as well. And so you'll be a teacher, you will feel a strong mission around healing, the healing arts, healing suffering, helping others, feeling the suffering with others as well, and being victimized as well, the suffering that you've gone through as well first. And so again, Chiron in the first house, or near the ascendant or the angles, with your sun or with your moon, that's going to be a prominent Chiron. And I'm doing a workshop about Chiron because I created a video about Chiron. It was so fascinating. Like it was just so thought-provoking, and I have a strong Chiron in my chart. So I guess I also personally resonated with so much of the themes that I decided to go a little deeper into it as well. There's something really powerful on the collective experience of grief and suffering that's also connected with sensitivity. And we can see that in the chart. Number 4 will be if you have a very activated water house there in your chart. So the 4th, the 8th, or the 12th house in your chart. So you have the sun in the 4th house, you have the moon in the 8th house, you have your Venus in the 12th house. Those are very sensitive placements to have as well. And in special, the 12th house. So I've seen oftentimes people that have like Virgo placements that are meant to be very logical, and or a Capricorn placements, and they say, I don't see myself as a Capricorn, I don't have that amount of ambition. And then you see they've got 5 planets in the 12th house. They tend to be a little bit more Piscean, they tend to be a little bit more sensitive to crowds, especially. I think the 12th house is very, very porous in the sense of you really connect to whatever is going on in the environment. Whatever planet you have in the 12th house in your chart will be a way that you pick up in others. So if you have Mercury in the 12th house, Mercury is how we think, what we think, etc. You have an ability to pick up on people's thoughts. And you don't know if it's you or if it's someone else, what's going on, but you can pick up on thought processes that are not yours. Mars there will be anger. So if you grow up in a hostile environment, but it wasn't overtly, you're going to be picking up on all of that because it's in the 12th house. 12th house, again, is where we dissolve boundaries. We're very connected with the collective unconscious. And in fact, I found the thesis that's very interesting, and I haven't read it yet. I've read just a couple of pages, but it is a Jungian psychoanalytic theory, but it is about sensitive people having a stronger connection with the unconscious. And for that reason, they're more prone to going into the process of individuation, of like becoming themselves, and the whole search for meaning and doing something meaningful, and etc. And according to that author, is because we're more connected to the unconscious. And I would definitely see that in the 12th house, or with Piscean and Neptune as well. And number 5, if you've got a prominent moon, you've got moon on the ascendant, you've got moon in Cancer in the ascendant, you're very, very sensitive as well. You're going to be picking up on emotions all around you as well. Venus, I put it in there because it does represent a feminine energy, and I don't mean feminine in the gender way, but in the yin yang is a more receptive energy that these 2 planets represent. So when we have Venus prominent in our ascendant, or angular, we're going to be more receptive to other people. We're going to care more about other people. In itself, just Venus, I wouldn't necessarily see it as a high sensitive person. It will be usually a combination, like I said before, usually a combination of all of those. But Venus does bring that receptivity as well. And the 7th house, I think, would be in the mixture. The 7th house is a natural Venus or Venusian house as well. And I think the 7th house is also because we're more attuned to others. The 7th house is the house of relationships, is the other person. We're more focused on the other person. We're good listeners when we have a lot of planets in the 7th house. we're very diplomatic and we're good with people. I mean, it's a great placement for psychologists and counselors because they're good listeners. Carl Jung had Sun in the 7th, Freud had Sun in the 7th, you know. So is a placement that I also include in this description here. So these are the 5 main topics here that you would find in the chart. All right. Now here I put a chart just because I'm an astrologer. I can't help. I can't resist. And I don't know how many of you can actually look at this and make any sense of it. So I'm aware. But I decided to put it in there just because. So Elena Room, she created a film as well. So there's a documentary about highly sensitives, which I also watched when I was doing a whole research about highly sensitives in the beginning. And Alanis Morissette is in it. And I was like, oh my God, Alanis Morissette is a highly sensitive person. And is very touching, really. She shares a lot of what she's gone through, especially being famous at such a young age and how she suffered, you know, during tours, and because there's so much going on, she didn't have enough downtime, and sensitives really need downtime. It's very, very precious to rest, to have downtime, to decompress, to digest all of that stimuli that we're picking up all the time. So just a quick mention here of the chart and of the story. And, you know, if you want to, you can email me and ask about the movie, or Google as well, and you'll find the movie very easily. But Alanis Morissette, I mean, we have a lot of water, okay? A lot of water in her chart. We've got Moon in Scorpio. We've got Jupiter in Pisces, Mercury in Cancer, Mars in Cancer as well, Saturn. Now, she's a Gemini, and we wouldn't necessarily think of Geminis as a highly sensitive or an empath, all right? As an air sign, it's very, you know, fleeting and communicative and very intelligent as a creature of the mind. But when you look at the rest of her chart, you pick up some of those flavors that I just shared with you. She has Chiron. This is the symbol for Chiron. Remember the wounded healer I just shared? It's right on her midheaven. Very, very close to her midheaven. She has Mars in the 12th house. She has Moon in the 4th. So the water houses are also involved. So we've got planets in water signs. We've got planets in water houses. We've got an angular Chiron. We've got a sun opposite Neptune as well. So you get the picture of what I was telling you before, of like how you're going to see loads of them. You're going to be able to see quite a few of them in the charts of people. And I don't know, I have the feeling that the more sensitive, the more you're going to be able to see that. This is the second chart and the only chart I put as well. This is Judith Orloff, so the psychiatrist that was talking about empaths and etc. And again, there's a lot of water in her chart. We've got Sun, Mercury, Uranus in Cancer. We've got Moon in Pisces, Saturn in Virgo, you know, North Node in Pisces as well. So we've got the Virgo Pisces. So again, we see some of those flavors that I shared in the slides before. So can you identify any of those in your chart? This is my question for you. Do you have any water in your chart? Strong placements in the water houses? Do you have any prominent Neptune or Chiron, or you're not sure? If you want, you know, astro.com is a great place to check your chart if you don't know about it. And I can give you the information as well after if you need. But it's a great place to cast your chart, to look at lists as well if you can't just look at the picture yet. But yeah, this is a question there for you about those placements. And now we move on to our part 3. And our part 3 will be about the astrology transits. And I think that's where we come to our toolkit a little bit, and to be like, okay, if I want you to come out of this session with something, it's probably something from this part 3, which is a little bit more practical, I guess. So astro transits as a dance. So we can think about astrological transits as a dance, as a rhythm that the sky is reflecting to us. There's a rhythm that's going on, and it's up to us if we're going to dance according to that rhythm or not. And by astrology transits, I mean the planets in the sky will keep moving, right? And those are what we call astrology transits. When they're, you know, the full moon is an astrology transit. It's when the sun and the moon are in opposition to each other. So astro transits as waves as well, which I really like that analogy, because there's nothing we can do to waves. We're swimming in the ocean. Here comes a wave. well, you got a couple of options. You can dive under it, you can try to just let it break on you, or you can get a little bored and you can take a ride with it and just move forward with that wave. So I feel there's something similar about astrology transits as well, that we can see them as waves, and waves of energy that we can use it to our benefit. We can align with these movements and use it to our own benefit, or we can be dragged along and drown with it sometimes, depending on what planets are involved. Now, the sensitivity to astrology is something that I'm observing, and I'm really thinking it makes a lot of sense, is that because we're more attuned to subtleties, we're more attuned to astrology as well. So with the lunations, with, Mars square Saturn, or something that's happening in the sky, we're going to be feeling very strongly. And I think there is a tendency for sensitives to feel beforehand as well. So let's say Saturn is coming to your ascendant. You're going to be feeling there's something on the way there. There's something that's happening, and you don't know exactly what, but you can kind of feel it. So I think we have this tendency to feel things a little bit before. And I think the fact that we're more attuned to the collective as well, what's happening around us, the people. And since I've been doing all of this research, I've been noticing tremendously. I mean, even like in happy situations as well. Like sometimes, being in a crowd is a bit overwhelming and is a little bit difficult and challenging, etc. But I remember being in a football game. There was a World Cup, and I was here in Brazil. And Brazil win the game, and I don't know, something was going on in that game, but I think they scored. And the whole crowd just went crazy with happiness. And it was like a wave. It was like I took something, or, it was like this wave of pleasure in my body just from the whole collective energy that's around me. So there's something really interesting of our ability to feel what's happening collectively. And this goes with the astrology as well. So in 2020, we had a triple conjunction of Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter in Capricorn. And all of you remember what happened in 2020, right? And the collective fear and the collective, the energy that was going on in 2020 was very difficult as well. And that particular astrological configuration was also very challenging symbolically. And I'm sure that we all could feel quite a lot what was going on there. So my advice and my invitation for you is know thy chart, because the more you know your chart, the more you're going to be able to use what's happening. Even watching videos from astrologers telling you what's happening weekly, say Mars. Right now we have a Mars square Pluto in the sky. It's a challenging configuration. And if you know your chart, you can place that in your chart. You can be like, aha, how am I going to navigate this? Because I know that in the collective, this energy is a bit disruptive. And how am I going to choose? How am I going to align my calendar a little bit if I can? Not to be overly paranoid or anything like that, but there are definitely things that are worth it. So what quick transits to be aware of? So which ones of the transits are easier for us to know collectively? Because it's for all of us. Like I said, we can go deeper and deeper and deeper, and we can really weave into a personal chart and talk hours about someone's chart, but that's not what we're doing today. So what sort of advice, what kind of transits can we look at in general that can be helpful to keep track? So Mars, the first one here, Mars. And I've got this picture. So all of these pictures I've done with Midjourney. So they're all like done by AI. And this was like, there's a bit of a scary crowd. And I put it there a little bit on purpose, because I think those transits can stir crowds quite a bit, and the people around you and what's happening around you. So I think this is one of the key things here with these transits as well. And so when we have a strong transit of Mars, there's going to be irritation, anger, fights, potential accidents. And I don't mean that's the only thing that's going to be happening. There are more constructive ways of using that. But crowds are not conscious. So what makes a difference, and what makes astrology, constructive astrology, is consciousness. If we're conscious and we're aware, we can work with it. We can sit during frustration. We can sit with our irritation. We can observe it rather than just throw a stone at somebody. But crowds don't go to therapy. Crowds don't self-reflect. So I personally tend to avoid, if I can, if there is something really strong, you know, some strong Mars configuration in the sky, and it can follow any astrologer of your like, that you're going to be able to track that a little bit. But Mars from and to natal placements as well could be one interesting to keep track of. So Mars right now is at 27 degrees Libra. And if you have your sun at the late degrees of Libra, that Mars will be hovering around your sun. So that's a time to pay attention to. Constructively is a good time for you to cycle or to run or to do something safe. Don't put yourself into unnecessary risk as well. But you can use that energy for physical activity. That's Mars applied in a positive way, okay? Also, the lunations, I think they're very important. They're very easy to track. New moons, if you can weave in a little time for you to rest, that's perfect. And again, being an empath, being a highly sensitive, you're constantly picking up on things, and it's exhausting. And it's really important to listen to that voice and not just be like, oh God, I'm so dramatic, or oh God, I'm so weak, I can't do things. It's like, really take that seriously. And using the new moon as a cyclic time as well for you to really purposefully go inwards, rest, and if you can. Sometimes we can't, but if that's possible, that's a good way of using that transit as well. Now, full moons, those are the ones that can be very tricky when it comes to the collective. Like, we got a full moon in Aries with Mars in Aries. The crowd does tend to be a little bit more edgy. There is an edginess in the air, and you know, it's really important to spot those so you can make informed decisions if you're going to go somewhere, if you're going to go for a party or not, or if you are going to give a party yourself or not. I tend to be more aware of those for traveling as well, because traveling tend to be more intense. The general vibe around is more intense. So I try to avoid if I can, and use full moons for my own benefit, for my own rituals, for spending time with my crystals, doing, mediumistic work, and, clearing my cards and doing things like that. So definitely the full moons. And obviously not every full moon, but definitely the more intense ones. And eclipse season as well. Eclipse season is a time of instability. And I think this is more about what you encounter around you than anything else. You knowing that you can work with it, right? It's a time of instability. What do you do when you're feeling unstable, when you need to be grounded? You go for a walk in nature, or you have a long bath with salts, or you use essential oils. There are so many tools that we can use individually when we're going through these times. But like I said, the collective doesn't do that. There is no consciousness there. So is a good time to step away a little bit if you can. If you can't, then get your black stones. That's my obsidian I carry in my pocket every time I have to go out, and these little things that we can also do, these little tools. And then obviously I needed to mention that there are long-term influences as well that will be important, but they're a little bit trickier to track depending on your knowledge of astrology as well, and how familiar you are, and etc. But those are definitely very important as well. Like I said, we had the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in 2020, and that's a big time of collective endings, and there is a lot of toxic energy that comes up. And so, or Pluto-Uranus, a square that we had a few years back. And we had Pluto-Uranus encountering each other in the 60s, when we had the whole hippie movement and all the things that were happening in the 60s. The astrologers usually connected with that transit as well. But you need an astrologer translating it for you, or if you're already in that path, that's something you can do it yourself. But those are definitely very important, and especially if they are picking up your chart. And my way of working as well with astrology is that those are gods, and they're asking to be honored. So that's how you pick up your surfing board. You can honor these gods and pick up your surfing board and hitch that lift, or you can be dragged and see what happens. So a Saturn transit will be asking you to become more mature, to become more serious about something, to take something seriously, to work hard on something. to focus your energy, to concentrate. And you can do that willingly, or you can do it unwillingly, which is then forced upon you a little bit. I don't know. That's usually how I see it happening. So I just wanted to mention briefly the long-term influences there as well. And note on retrogrades. I mean, you know how people talk about the retrogrades, Mercury's retrograde, everything's going to go bad. But I do feel that from the empath and the highly sensitive perspective is a bit of a breather, because retrogrades, the retrograde part of a cycle is when we can take a deep breath in, is when we can take a step back and and process what's going on, rethink, edit, go back, go inwards, and I think all of those movements are familiar to us. Usually we're familiar with that, we're used to it, we actually enjoy it. So fear not, because when we have planets retrograde, this is a time that we actually can feel more comfortable going inwards and do all of that processing those cycles, understanding what they mean to us, how we've been working and dealing with that energy, etc. So it's just a brief note on retrogrades there for us. And this is, again, finding constructive ways in cultivating, using these transits to cultivate our beautiful selves. This is the way I like to think about astrology, and I like to see astrology. It's not about being Pollyanna and like overly simplifying things. Yes, there'll be challenges, there are challenging times, and change is not always easy. We're creatures of habit. But what is a constructive way? Astrological symbols have the worst, the best, all the colors in between. What is a more positive, more elevated way of expressing these energy that would work for me, that would be conducive to the life I actually want to create? This is the gist. Is to really, so if you're following an astrologer that's usually fear-mongering you and you don't feel good after watching, I think you don't need that. Because there's so many ways that we can look at something. Astrologically speaking, there are so many perspectives there. It's really about fine-tuning and finding this way of cultivating like a gardener. And, just a heads up that we are headed to eclipse season now. And again, like I said, it's usually a time of instability. Eclipse season is about readjustments and readjusting things in our lives. And it does asks from us to see what doesn't serve anymore in a more intense way than just the lunations. Because every month, the lunations and the lunar cycles will give us a reminder, and we will go through that. Now with the eclipse, is a little bit, isn't not changing, it's a little louder. And so it's a good time for us to really think about what needs to be readjusted. So the new moon solar eclipse will be happening on the 14th of October, 21 Libra. And where is that in your chart? Do you have anything in Libra? What sort of intentions can you set with this that will be like that flavor? If it's in the fourth house, it's your home, your belonging, your roots, your parental interjections. We can try and find, if it's in your ascendant, how you come across, how you show yourself. So it's really using these energies rather than being scared of them, using them to your favor. And being a sensitive, you can feel them more. And I think that's something in witchcraft, isn't it? The more energy we have, the more emotions we have, the more power the ritual will have. So if we can use that sensitivity to our favor with those alignments, I think we're up for a win there. And the full moon eclipse will be happening on the 28th of October, very close to Halloween as well. And this could be a blast as well, like a very powerful time to honor these energies, to reflect on them, to think about how can I adjust? Where is my life asking for readjustment? How can I use this extra boost of energy in a positive way in terms of movement and readjustments? Life is movement, life is growth. So the planets are just reminding us of that. There we are. So this is the time when any questions or comments, please. I'm gonna stop my sharing when we do the questions, this is my short bibliography here as well. So you can take a picture there as well if you want to go and check some of these. It's not super comprehensive. It's just a little taster there. And this is if these journeys for you, if you enjoyed the journey I just shared, if you want to check it out, this is where there's a little bit about this workshop about Chiron and going into that archetype a little bit more, especially if you feel that this is part of your life. And as a sensitive and an empath, there's usually a strong Chiron in our charts, and a Chiron story and a Chiron mythology throughout our lives, in the fabrics of our lives. I love that. So this is it. This is me. Now I'm open to questions, open to anything that you're thinking and reflecting there.
I really appreciated that. That was amazing. Just like such a good overview and kind of discussion about all of the energies at play and how charts affect us, and like I just really appreciated it. I love that you said empaths absorb people's emotions, and people who are highly sensitive feel them but don't necessarily absorb them. That's such a good distinction. I think for you would be probably that was like super clarifying.
Nice.
I'm curious if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask. If you don't want to turn on your mic, you're welcome to put them into the chat. Kamal says, I absolutely enjoyed your session, and I know that there's so much more to know, and I would love to absorb this knowledge.
Nice. Yeah.
So there was also a question. I don't know if you saw this one, or it's just gone. I can't find it anymore. So Kamal has been working on a specific intention, and she knows she's very close. Can her nature chart help her to seek answers?
I think so. I think, like, if you think about your natal chart as a map, it can really help us. So it just from that perspective, it helps you navigate. So it really helps you to use those waves, identify those waves. So let's say you're working on a specific intention. So I know you guys are the witches of Instagram of working with the abundance, right? And doing the abundance challenges and etc. Well, you're going to look for Jupiter, or you're going to look for transits in your second house. And you're going to see the moon doing things every month in your chart, that you can reinforce that idea every month using the moon in a very specific way, tailored for you. So I absolutely think that you can definitely use astrology for it. And this is one of the uses in antiquity as well. It was like talismans and magic, and astrology was very much used in that context. So definitely, yes, it's a wonderful map. If you get into the obsession of discovering it, which is what happened to me and so many of my astrology colleagues, it's definitely, yeah, a wonderful map. Yeah. Any more questions? I do see some.
Another question. Sorry, there's a few coming through, so I'm just trying to grab them.
No problem, no problem.
There was one about how to read a natal chart if you don't know the exact time that you were born, which is one that actually comes up quite often. So maybe you have a little bit of advice on that.
Sure. There is a technique called rectification, and there's some astrologers are like specialized in that, so they're going to be able to help you find the most accurate time. But you can always look at the chart. So let's say, I would say if you got a window of time, that makes it easier. So if you're like, it's between 10 and 12, and you've got kind of a window there for you to work, that's already really helpful. And you can check how much it changes, because sometimes it doesn't change as much, depending on how long that window will be. If it's a few minutes, then it won't make such a huge difference. And then the third thing as well is that you will lose your ascendant. So if you absolutely don't have no idea of time, then you don't have the ascendant in the houses as well. So you miss a piece of information. But most of the planets will be in that position for the whole day of your birth. So you still get something. You still know what your Sun, your Mars, your Venus, there'll still be some information for you to dive into. Yeah.
We can maybe do a couple more questions. We're at the top of the hour. So
sure. Yeah.
Like one or two more questions. So if you want to ask anything, make sure you put it into the chat quickly and I can ask for you. So someone said, firstly, thank you for the amazing session. And then her question was, with the moon in the first house and a heavy water chart, They absorb energy unknowingly. Can astrology and transits help to kind of work with this? Like, what would be your best advice?
Yes, I think what happens with the transits as well is like we're born with our charts, right? We have that. That's a given. That's ours. We can't send back and ask for another one. So we have that. And what happens is that all the transits throughout our lives, as we get older, you know, transits will be happening. Those transits are also introducing us to ourselves a little. It's like we get to know another part of ourselves as well. So this is another process that's happening with these transits. Now, what I think, you know, the way I was using as well in this talk in particular is in a way of protecting your energy. Because if you're an empath and you have that moon in the first and you have all of that water as well, you will be absorbing, and you won't necessarily want to go out to a punk rock concert on the full moon with Aries and eclipse, and, you know, when everyone's going to be going crazy around you. So I think those transits can really help you navigate in that way and be like, right, okay, like this is really a time that I want to take a step back and relax. But yes, in general, I think there will be other things that transits will be pointing out for you and helping you to grow into the person you're meant to be, which I think every transit gives a chance to step a little bit closer there and a little bit closer, you know? And so it depends on the transit. That moon in water in the first house, you know, if it's transited by Neptune, if it's transited by Pluto, or it will give a different flavor there for you to work with. But it can definitely help in the process, knowing about it. Consciousness is the key word there. Being conscious of it, knowing and working with that energy consciously, I think can make magic. Yeah.
Okay, and one last question, if that's okay with you. So
sure.
This one is sort of a bit more general, and it's about, I assume this is about a relationship. So having the exact same sign and the exact same houses in the north and the south node, is there a reason that this creates such intense emotions?
There is definitely a recognition. I think you're going to find that a lot of people were born at a similar time and you won't feel that same level of connection. So the chart could be a chart of anything, could be a chart of a rabbit. And I'm sure there were rabbits being born at the same time as you, and they'll share that chart and you won't necessarily feel that strong connection. I think there's still a mystery that we can't quite pin down that gives life to our bodies and that makes us, you know? It's like we have commonalities. So let's say, you know, if someone else has got the same sun or the same moon or inverted signs, and then we can see each other. Like those techniques of relationship that can point out when we can see each other, when we can really understand, and there's a sense of understanding there because we're coming from a similar place. But it doesn't mean that is, you know, is necessarily going to be the most, you know, because you're bound to have those commonalities with more people. But when you meet that person at a certain time, when you know, those are mysteries. Like how, you know, that design and that fate, you know, how much fate, how much free will we have. I don't know. There's so many mysteries, and I love them. Yeah. So the chart helps mapping out and understanding the energy exchange. Yes, absolutely.
There are a couple of, actually, there's been a lot of people who've just really thanked you for your time and knowledge and expertise. And
nice.
I also would just really love to, I really always appreciate you having these discussions with us and sharing kind of your vast wellspring of knowledge with the community. It's very much appreciated, and we always love having you here. I think that's all the questions we'll take for now, but just wanted to say thank you for your time, and thank you so much for everybody who was here with us. And if you want to join more of these workshops, we have a really awesome one about accessing your intuition coming up in TWC shortly, along with some breath work, crystal healing, a shamanic journey. So lots of fun stuff coming up. Nice. And we hope you'll be able to join us there. And thank you again so much, Fernanda. It's been a
thank you, everyone. It's been great. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Fernanda. Bye.
Thank you for the
Bye.
blessed be.